friends, and welcome back to the Rebel Show. Like normal, I hope everybody's doing awesome. Things are good here in Colorado Springs. We are at the beginning of May, and it snowed. Surprise, surprise. So, today I want to talk a little bit about the Socialist Agenda. We've been hammering on that a lot throughout the past couple months and even years because it's something that we're moving towards, and I just want people to know what they're moving towards. If that's what they really want, great. But if not, you should know. So, some of these notes were taken from Glenn Beck's book, Arguing with Socialists. It's a really good, entertaining read. It's got a lot of cartoons and stuff and a lot of good information. It's pretty thick, but it's an easy read. It's fun. So, the socialist plan is to eliminate classes and exploitations. And at the same time, they'll use political power to steal wealth from others. That's what they do. So to create equality and remove exploitations, they will have to exploit some and give to others. So they will tax you more so that they can give it to someone else. Because it's unfair that you have that much. So to make things equal and fair, we need to take what you have to give to someone else. In order to redistribute, one must first take. So that's what the government does. Sometimes you hear it referred to as pay their fair share. And whatever that means. What's fair? No one's ever told us what the fair share is. If government steals one's property to redistribute, what are the rules for redistribution and who gets what? No one ever tells us that either. And what is to stop the government from keeping the property for themselves? Or give to their friends or whatever? Most socialist dictators are democratically elected. And one of the main points of Lenin's writings was that a revolution can only be achieved by strong leadership who will dedicate their entire life to the cause. Now, let's look at some politicians in office right now that have been there for forever. I can think of quite a few that have been in office for a long, long time. And it was meant to be go serve a term or two and move on. And that way you always got a fresh perspective from people that are actually living out in the world. Not people that are career politicians that live in Washington and don't really know what the rest of the world's going through. People in Washington don't have any idea what, like a farm or something in, Kansas is doing. They have no idea, right? So they dedicate their entire life to a cause. Just keep that in mind. So we're going to go through an overview of some socialist experiments in Utopia. So here's the Utopia, which, by the way, means nowhere, Utopia. So here is the Utopia you can experience. I probably won't be able to get through all of these in one episode, but maybe. All right. Number 1, the Plymouth Colony of 1620. The socialist commune-style community was set up. Everybody shared equally. The problem was hard workers got as much as the elderly and lazy. Production slowed and hunger grew. Governor William Bradford separated the land between the colonists and had them grow their own crops. And with this new responsibility came new abundance in crops. So when you share everything, people realize I don't have to work as hard and I get the same amount. And so it didn't work. So they had to do something different. Number 2, Angola, 1977. The Socialist Popular Movement for Liberation of Angola, led by Cuban troops under Fidel Castro, murdered tens of thousands of people when seizing power. Now, this wasn't democratically elected. They seized and murdered to get there. Sounds awesome. Cambodia, 1975. The Communist Party of Cambodia, a group of Marxists, imposed radical ideas using brutal force led by Pol Pot. People banned from religion and family ties. Civil liberties were taken away. They were forced to work for the collective. Children from 8 years were separated from their parents to go to labor camps to be indoctrinated. Because they don't trust the parents, because the parents could teach different. You can't have parents making decisions for their children. Leaders stated that the only acceptable lifestyle was to be a poor agricultural worker. Factories, hospitals, schools, and colleges were shut down. Could you imagine what would happen if hospitals were shut down forever? Schools, you could homeschool. Colleges, you could figure that stuff out. Manufacturing would be a problem. You have to import, which would be expensive. And hospitals, though, that would be interesting. Lawyers, doctors, and teachers and engineers were considered to be a threat to the regime. Money was abolished, and all of life was regulated. Remember, this is Cambodia, 1975. One could not choose their own marriage partner, even. You could not choose your job or the clothes you wear. You remember that part in the Wall-E movie where whatever day it would pop up, oh, today's clothes are blue, and everyone would snap to blue. It's the new color, whatever, That's what it reminds me of. China in the 20th century. Estimated 65 million people died at the hand of, I'm going to butcher this name, Mao Zedong, or Dong, or whatever, because of his reforms. 65 million. Wow. That's a real pandemic. Starvation due to agricultural mismanagement. When the family members died, they didn't bury them because they could still collect the food rations for that member. And that's been true for other socialist communist nations also, where they keep the body hidden so they can collect that food card. Often, if mice didn't eat the dead, people would eat them. Could you imagine eating your aunt or something? Or your grandma? Can you imagine that? Man, that sounds like utopia. Amazing, right? If a stranger passed through the neighborhood, they would murder and eat them. These are starving Chinese, right? Many ate their own children. Now, this is biblical proportionate craziness. This happened in the Bible. Starvation was caused by moving workers from farms to steel production to export. Wow. If you don't have any farmers, you don't have any food. 20 million died in over 1,000 labor camps. That's amazing, 1,000. Overall estimated 100 million killed, exiled, imprisoned, or starved in the Chinese utopia. Right? Sign me up. With socialism, there's always a promise of equality and prosperity for all. In reality, power is always used to suppress individual freedoms and control the economy with an iron fist. The elites stay rich and everyone else becomes poor or leaves. Like right now in the United States, anybody can become rich if they put some work in. Anybody can come out of poverty and become wealthy. Capitalism has brought more people out of poverty than any other financial system. And we're still there if we allow it. But if we moved into another system that's not proven, it may not work out. So Cambodia, late 1950, using military force, Fidel Castro took power and with the Soviet Union as an ally, kept power for 57 years. Remember George Washington, they wanted him to continue serving after 2 terms, and he said, no, I don't want to do it, it's too much power, and stepped down. His programs included free healthcare, education, and government-guaranteed jobs. We're talking about Cuba. Free healthcare, education, and government-guaranteed jobs. Where does the government get their funds? And then they guarantee jobs. That's interesting. Also, crushing free speech and political liberty, including protesting. So don't use the system to destroy the system, right? He killed more than 140,000 people. Many fled to the United States. Even today, there's food rationing. Now, America's a pretty gluttonous state. You can have anything you want as much as you want. So food rationing would be a big problem. Nazi Germany, 30s and 40s. The Holocaust Memorial Museum states that 15 to 20 million people were killed in 42,400 camps or European ghettos. Can you imagine 42,400 camps? Is there even that many McDonald's in the United States? Wow, that's a lot of camps. Nazis were National Socialists. Nazi is an abbreviation for the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Individuals own property, but the government controlled the means of production, which is important because if you need to sell, on average, 10,000 loaves of bread a week, let's making up a number, but they only let you sell 5, there's going to be food shortages. So government can't control means of production, supply and demand needs to. So people had ownership in name only. All right, North Korea. Estimated 5.3 million killed, tortured, or imprisoned. 120 are still serving in prison camps. 120,000 are still serving in prison camps. Wow. And they say there's not slavery. Resources are managed and fairly distributed. That's awesome, right? Fairly, that's good, whatever that means. Many are placed in unpaid labor jobs, forcing them to take a second job to survive. That's fair. Students work up to 16 hours a day in forced labor camps to pay salaries of the school staff. Well, the school staff need to be paid, so that's fair, right? Restricted travel and civil liberties, no duh. State-run media, news outlets, broadcasting propaganda reinforcing Kim Jong-un's reign. When you start to see the statues and the posters of your leader up in places, you've got a problem. If you want to read some other propaganda, look up North Korean unicorn lair. That's some interesting stuff. So we're going through all this to present the socialist communist countries and what they have gone through and what they're going through. And most of them haven't recovered fully. I know in China, they're starting to implement some free market systems because they're just not functioning properly. It's just not working, and they're realizing that. So they're heading away from something that America could be heading towards. And that's why I do this, is so that people realize what it costs and what it is that they're stepping into. And if you want it, vote for it, because you're doing a great job at it. And I think we need to make a change, and I think people need to think past their own selfish desires and realize that it really does take work. God created us for work, and it takes work to have what we want and do what we want. So on that note, let's end this one, and thank you very much.